Hey, it's Black History Month.
And with that, welcome to this week's episode of the 800's. I am one of your hosts, Alex, and you just heard from my lovely co-host, Adam. And quick shout out and thank you to our tech guy, Alan, behind the scenes. Thanks for making this all work, tech, all technical problems included. We wouldn't be able to do this without you.
Yeah, so if you joined us before for that brief interlude before we started talking, you probably heard some music. That music was Fearless First from Incompetech. Go check them out. They're incompetech.filmmusic.io. They've got a whole bunch of cool music and stuff. We use that for everything. Everything, yep. Just about everything. Also, Audible. If you enjoy audiobooks like I do myself, I suggest you check out Audible. Their library is massive. They have it all. If you want to try it, we have is it called an affiliate link? Yeah, something like that. We have an affiliate link. dmstable.com/audible. I don't know if that's the right word. But the link is right. Check it out. You'll get 1 month free and one free book, too. And finally, this show runs with the support of our patrons from Patreon. If you would like to join Patreon, there's a link below the video. You totally should. It's how we decide on our book votes and all that. So if you want to vote on what book we read next, then check out Patreon. That's all I got. Over to you, Alex.
Just that quick reminder that our next vote ends at 9:15, so if you want in, get on it.
Hurry up.
All right, so this week on the 800's, we will be discussing our Black History Month book of choice, and that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Hoping I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
Our story takes us to the heart of the fictional nation of Orisha, a land of magic wielded by the mighty Magi, until one day it disappeared. Soon after, many of the white-haired Magi were slaughtered and their progeny relegated to lives of servitude and persecution, then known as diviners. After running with a princess, Zele has her powers reawakened and it is now up to her to restore magic to the land. But can she do it without destroying herself and everyone she loves?
That was good.
Yeah, that was a little bit rough, but I think all of us are having a bit of a rough week. So please bear with us, those of you who are in chat. We are it's being a long one.
Yeah, sometimes we're better than other times. This is one of those times where the coffee has not brewed yet, so to speak.
The coffee hasn't brewed at 8:30 p.m.
Hey. I work nights, okay?
Fair enough.
This is when I drink coffee. Anyway, if you haven't joined us before, I'll give you a quick rundown of how this whole shebang works. Essentially, we're here to discuss things, specifically things about children of blood and bone. If you have something you'd like to discuss, go ahead and throw it in chat at any time, starting now. Yeah, instead of coffee, I have Mountain Dew. But anyway,
Close enough.
So if you have that topic, go ahead and throw it in chat. Otherwise, Alex and I will come up with a topic or question to discuss. Alex and I will discuss whatever topic has been posed, giving you guys in chat watching along an opportunity to type up your responses and get them to display on the live view. And then we'll throw it over to the comment section and take a look at what you guys have to say about things. And we'll say things like, oh, hey, so-and-so, that's a really good point. Or, I don't know, man, I think you're kind of dumb. No, I'm just kidding. We won't say you're dumb. But anyway, we will comment about what you say. So go ahead and throw comments out there.
All right, and as always, just a quick reminder, this is a show geared towards adults, and despite the fact that we're reading YA this week, we do cover adult topics and such, and while we try not to rely too much on swearing, it does happen. Also, we're trying to build a fun and supportive community where people can share their interests without any fear of judgment or any meanness. So just in short, be nice or fuck off.
Be nicer, GTFO. With that, let's get the conversation started. Alex and chat, what were your initial thoughts of this book?
All right, so my first impressions were I thought it got off to a relatively strong start where I was pulled in by some fairly strong characters, and it starts off with a bit of an action scene, and I thought it was pretty well described, so I had a lot of hope for this book going forward. One thing I didn't notice when I was I say reading, but I was listening to it on audiobook, and one thing I wasn't expecting was not only was this a multi-perspective book, but it's a multi-perspective and all of it's in first person. So partway through, when I wasn't paying enough attention, the eye changed. And it fucked with me super hard. And I was just like, wait, what am I listening to? So I had to go back and reread it again. And it was a little weird. And like, if you're doing audiobook, you have to pay attention to when the chapters switch, because it switches from like one person to another. And if you're not paying attention, you can very easily lose track of like where you are, whose perspective. And the other thing that was throwing me off is usually when there's multi-perspective, people aren't in the same area until usually like the climax of the book. Like there's different perspectives, like one will be here, one will be here, one will be like here, and like different cities are pretty far separated and they don't converge until later in the story. Again, usually at the climax. But this happened pretty close to the beginning, and I was just like, wait, am I rehearing things? Is it deja vu? And it was a little tough to deal with in an audio format. I don't know how that would have been had I read it, physically, like I tried to do with at least half of our books anyway. But I don't know, it got a little confusing at times for me, and I kind of had to just, like I said, really focus in. And one of the perks of audiobooks is that you can kind of be doing other things, and that just wasn't the case with this for the most part.
Yeah.
And but like I said, there are some elements of this that drew me in pretty quickly. Like I said, some very good imagery and descriptions of like battle scenes, and I forget how. Well, I'll consider it for first impressions. The author really does know how to evoke traumatic scenes. I actually felt it when it was happening, and they were really good with their descriptions to kind of pull you in when it came to that. So, at least that part of it was impressive, even if I was confused at times.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say I had kind of a similar problem with the audiobooks. I did notice that every chapter is named after whoever's perspective it is pretty early on, so I just kept checking to make sure I knew who was talking. But obviously that was still kind of jarring. But no, for me, I just like you, I thought the beginning was really great. It started off really strong. I hinted at this lore that was once prevalent in the world and might be coming back soon. It's definitely a age-old trope for novels, and one of my favorites is the ancient magic was lost but may be coming back. I don't know about the whole chosen one trope. A lot of novels these days do the chosen one trope, but I don't think it was too overhanded in this one. I thought it was an acceptable amount of overhanded.
And that's one of the, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, so good strong start. Made you interested to learn more about the world.
Yeah, it looks like VS Drake agreed for the most part as far as tough to multitask in this book. They also love the lore, and I very much did as well. Like that setting for the different types of magi and their, how each, like right off the bat, you find out that there's different types of magic and they're each tied to a different god. And they have, they're called different things, and I thought that was pretty cool. It definitely is an Earth adjacent story. It's basically supposed to be essentially what would be like a what if pre-colonial Nigeria had magic and it's a little more advanced, essentially. Especially with metalworking. But obviously alt Earth because magic in general. Which we later find out is throughout the world. Forget what the other country we find out is basically supposed to be a Japan equivalent from Rowan.
Yeah.
But VS Drake's asking us, what did we think of like some of the backdrop details for the world?
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of cool things planned out. I felt like it could have used a little additional detail, especially the magic system. It seemed like a very important part of the, I forget what they were called. Excuse me. The diviners' lifestyle revolved around the magic system heavily, but we didn't find out a whole lot about exactly what all the magic system entailed. There was a mention here and a mention there about like different magic users and what they could do, like the seer, grandma lady. Obviously, our main character was, I forget, was she just straight up necromancer or something?
She's a reaper, which is basically a necromancer.
Yeah. There's the fire guy.
Burner.
So we got some details, but it felt like it could have been fleshed out a little bit more. And kind of that same theme with pretty much everything is that it seemed like a lot of intricate things were going on, but we the reader didn't get a ton of the details down the pipe.
Yeah, I would agree.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot about the water dude. Yeah, the water. No, I'm just kidding.
But then the Fire Nation attacked. But anyways, so I had a similar issue throughout it because like the magic system drew me in the very beginning, and that's why I wanted to keep my first impressions to the very beginning, is because I kept wanting more. It just wouldn't fucking come in any sort of detail. It was never really explained what their powers really are. The closest we get is a little bit of insight into the Reaper powers because of Zayle's struggle to harness her own powers, but we don't know what that's like for anybody else. I guess we kind of get a little bit of it with Inan and his like ability to like read minds and shit, or dreams or whatever the heck. I don't know. That was also I think it was a little sloppily put together, but I don't know if that's intentional because at the very end of the book, Zayle's basically told you'll know about it soon. We'll go over this soon, and it was a little bit kind of heavy-handed, like, yeah, I know I didn't throw it in there. We'll get we'll get to it next book. And I hope I hope that the author does, but it was a little disappointing not getting more of it. That said, I think there was some wonderful detail in the world that still made it really colorful. And admittedly, I had to do a lot of Googling when they were talking about especially different types of clothing. Like let's see, like the Gale. I didn't know that's what that was called. As soon as I Googled it, I was like, oh, that's what those things are called. Or stuff like that. That once I knew what they were, it lent a lot of vibrancy to the world, which I thought was pretty well done. And I think along with things like the riders, the rider bees being kind of like these mashup animals, which is part of the reason why I made that Avatar: The Last Airbender reference. Like the turtle ducks and platypus bears and things like that. And it was kind of similar-ish, except the author did a good job of putting in, animals that would actually be found in the area.
Yeah.
And I thought that sort of fantastical backdrop, along with these elements that are very much real in our real world, kind of, it's the kind of thing that I would love to see brought to life, because I think it would be really cool. So I enjoyed reading I enjoyed those parts of the book. I thought that part of the world building, the ability to see the world and see the culture in it, I thought was pretty well done.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right. So, was there anything else in chat? Like you said, like we always say, feel free to throw in anything else that you want us to talk about. But let's talk a little bit about the characters, though. What did you think of our three main characters whose viewpoints we were looking through? So, specifically, that's going to be Inan, Amari, and Zaylee.
Yeah, I thought they were all interestingly unique, to sum it up. I think one of the things I really liked about this book is that everybody had their own conflict to resolve. Inan was conflicted about the fact that he was a magic user, and he wanted to be somebody who was more sympathetic to his people, where his father was not sympathetic, and he struggled to improve upon himself as the story went along, and become the better person. Same thing with the other two as well. They each had conflicts to resolve. Zaylee, the one that stood out for me was that she was an oppressed person who had to learn that just because she's been oppressed by everybody of a particular group, that doesn't mean everybody in that group is going to oppress her. But yeah.
Anything on Amari?
Yeah, I mean, she had her sheltered life before, and she was experiencing the world for the first time, and kind of got hit with the reality punch. So I felt like she grew a lot in how to actually behave in society.
No, I'd to some degree agree on all those points, and that it was nice that they actually all had different conflicts and they weren't all just trying to solve the same thing. There was built into it a room for growth for all of them, that was unique to all of them. However, I think it was dealt with a little bit shallowly, except for maybe Zele. I don't think Amari got enough time to like really shine as far as like gaining that sort of independence that comes with being away from a sheltered life. She has her moments, but it kind of rang a little hollow when it happened. Uh, Especially when she has to stand up to her brother. I thought there was a lot more potential there for, I don't know, something a little more deep and profound to happen, and it was just like it was dealt with more like, here's the conflict, and it's like, here's the conflict, I'm standing up to you, we're done. Not any there wasn't, I guess it missed the reflection piece of it for me a bit, which I think would have led to just a little more depth that would have made it a little bit more fulfilling. That's just my preference anyway. But and non maybe it's just because like specifically this character had probably one of the harder like internal conflicts as far as like battling like two very separate ideas within himself of his duty to his father and everything he'd been taught growing up to be king was to basically be a sociopath. and he's like realizing, I've got a conscience, but he still has this duty to his country and to what he has been taught is right, not to mention just oodles of daddy issues.
Yeah.
and uh and at the very end, and at the end, yeah, he does have this like redemption piece where he's like trying to piss Zaylia off so that she finishes the job while she's kind of raging out. But it's, I don't know, it feels self-serving, and while it's even in that it's supposed to be for her benefit or whatever, however he's justifying it, I don't know, he just felt a little wishy-washy, which I get teenagers can be, but I don't know. He it was just a little dissatisfying to see the way that he handled that situation at the very end when he, after going back and forth like 5 or 6 different times, which characters are allowed to do, but again, it's missing that reflection piece. It's just these things happen. And despite the fact that we're getting their different perspectives, there's not enough like self-reflection on a lot of this stuff. And we do get a bit more of that with Zele, but honestly, the best reflection pieces are when she's like talking to her mom or her dad in her dreams, or even the Sky Mother. Like those are the best instances for her, and they're not, they are technically internal. But I thought hers was handled the best because the reflection didn't need to be with herself. She had something to bounce it off of, and I don't think the others got enough of that for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So BS Drake wants to talk about some of the lackluster parts, in particular the love arc. So what did you think of the romance?
I thought it was an unnecessary addition to the book. I don't feel like it needed to be there. Like they could have just gotten along and that would have been fine.
I'm going to go a step further and say not only was it unnecessary, but it was just why? Like there was like it was beyond unnecessary, and I think it legitimately took away from a lot of things because Zele and Anon don't fit together in any fucking way. Like it makes zero sense whatsoever. Like he's not even, there's not enough kindness coming from him to overrule any trauma that she has based on her own preconceived notions about what his privileged ass is like. But like like I said, there's nothing there to counter that makes it seem like it's even remotely compelling for their romance. Like, yeah, and for him, she was this forbidden fruit or something, and that just objectifies a really strong female character. And I thought that was just, again, why? It takes away from a character when you've got somebody objectifying him and they're falling head over heels for him, or ass over tea kettle, as it may be. It's
yeah.
That
I think
yeah,
other than that scene, though, I'd say, I don't know. In terms of lackluster, I feel like a lot of the parts were, like a lot of the scenes were well played out. Although I did feel like the ship battle Coliseum thing,
mm-hmm.
The convenience of having the gem there, and the fact that they actually did just give it up and go out of business seemed a little like, I don't know, leading for the story.
Yeah, I think that it kind of is. I'm going to let that lead into something that I found to be a bit of an issue throughout as well, is just this, how the right person just shows up, like, oh so conveniently, and it's, again, they just pop up out of nowhere, and they're just there, and they solve the problem, like, or yeah, there are a lot of leading plot points, and if this were like a choose your own adventure, it would feel super railroady, but there's another term for it that I can't think of for the life of me. But yeah, it is very Deus Ex Machina type of thing where it's just where those are the areas though where there's room, where you get the most growth out of your characters, is those areas of struggle, and a lot of those potential areas for real struggle kind of got undercut because the author just brought in somebody else to like solve the issue. And it's pretty typical in a lot of these types of books to have like the wise sage character. I'm forgetting what the guy's name is in this. The one who teaches them who teaches Zaylee how to actually like access like the deeper connection so that she can actually talk with the Sky Mother. Blanking on his name. Somebody can help me out. Sorry, I've got notes, but
that's not one I wrote down.
Well, but you know that guy. He's the guy who exploded himself.
Yeah, hang on.
Why am I blanking on his name?
Well, we must stop the stream and find out.
Yeah, but yeah, he was there for like, so yeah, that guy was there for like one chapter, and he's like, he's the wise sage type character who comes in and teaches them how to do something, but then there's no like struggle with it. There's nothing we really get out of it until Zaylee actually starts speaking with the dead, essentially. And oh gosh, man, we are doing so good with the stream, weren't we?
Yeah.
No, this was I know, but I think that kind of speaks to the problem with a character like that, because usually the sage type characters are the ones I latch onto, the ones that I find memorable, and the fact that he really wasn't, other than he exploded, that just kind of proves my point, is that those characters are meant to bring something to the table that makes them memorable characters, and he just wasn't, and that kind of speaks to all the characters who show up like that, except for maybe Rowan, and that's mostly because Rowan shows us that there's a bigger world outside of that one country, and that's what stood out to me for him. Like, that's how you can do a character right that comes in with something that the main characters need. They have to come with more than just the thing that the characters need, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, and if they don't come with more than that, then it just feels, they feel like a plot point. They feel like a railroad, you know, and it was a little bit disappointing in Lekin. Yeah, that's the dude. Jeez. Yeah, so that was one issue that I had with this, like, throughout, was a lot of these other characters coming in and just being, here's the thing you need, and then fucking off into the night type of thing. And but VS Drake wants the other side of the coin. I think that's fair. What did the book do well?
Excellent question. Yes. Kind of hinted on it earlier, but I was a big fan of the diverse conflicts that the book covered. It felt like this is the first book that I read that really had a conflict for everything. You know, you had character versus self. I feel like that one's pretty obvious with Anon. Character versus character. Again, pretty obvious. You have the two sides.
All over the place.
Yeah. Character versus nature.
That was a pretty big one, too.
In what way?
Oh, I mean, if you consider magic a part of, you know, nature, like this character, like Anon versus like the magic within himself and that connection.
Yeah, I'd say that's still more self, but
fair enough.
With nature, they did have, like, in my mind, what comes to mind is they kind of hint on it at the very beginning, but like the poverty of the people, and the fact that, you know, they have to essentially leave for a journey with absolutely nothing.
So literally them against the elements of travel.
Yeah. Character versus supernatural, or character versus God.
Okay, that one should be obvious.
Yeah, that one's pretty obvious. Again, you have the many references to the cultural religion in this story. Let's skip character versus technology, but if you got something cool for that, then cool. But character versus society, it was another obvious one with the essentially racism that the main government feels towards the magi and the diviners.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of different ways to introduce conflict, although it did have an overarching conflict above all else, which was, let's bring back magic, or let's stop magic from coming back. Yeah. So I thought it was well done.
Yeah, it was really good at like covering all sorts of conflicts. I completely agree. My favorite parts that I thought it did well, I'm along the lines of more of what V.S. Drake was saying with, I thought the imagery in it, particularly in like the fight scenes and stuff, was incredibly well done. I think for a book that I thought it had some pacing issues. I'm sorry to throw a negative into this, but like there were some pacing issues with it for me. Particularly stretches in between action, but when the action got there, fuck yeah, I was all in it. You know, like you said, there was a little bit of an issue with some of the stuff done with like the boat battle, like in how they found the gem, but the actual battle itself was really cool and I thought was really well done. And like, you know, when I think a book that's based on Africa, a boat battle is not at all what would have come to mind. And I thought that was really cool and really well done. And you know, like having a nautical arena, like, or Coliseum type of thing, like, who the fuck thinks of that? Like, I thought that was super awesome. And hello, Storm Reed. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
And especially thanks for joining us after we messed up for most of the stream to this point.
Yes. We're not going to mess up at all after this. So.
Anyway, so
came for the good part.
So one of the things that I also enjoyed was the ability of the author to bring emotion into those like really tense actiony moments. In particular, when she loses her mama and baba, like both those instances. Now, credit where credit is due. The reader for the audiobook did a phenomenal job of bringing like real emotional strain to the characters as they like cried out. Like that definitely helped. But you know, like in those moments, the way that the author described what Zayla was going through and you know what she was feeling and experiencing in those moments legitimately in the beginning brought a tear to my eye, which is why I had such high hopes for this book throughout, because I was like, holy shit, we're like 10 chapters in and I'm like already, oh boy. You know, so that part I thought was extremely well done, and you know, I had a lot of fun with that. Obviously the lore part is like maybe not handled the best, but setting up a world where you're that interested, I thought that was the beginning was done well. But looks like a Storm Reed, yeah, like that. We definitely love the magic elements, and we're Sanderson fans here, so we obviously like the multi-perspective writing. You missed it, Storm Reed, but we did also mention that we had a little bit of issue with it being all in first person, but if you pay attention to the chapters, you should be able to get around that. Yeah. Other than that, yeah, I think that covers, the things that I thought were done, like, really well. There's a lot of stuff that was just done okay, like, again, the stuff in between, the pacing was okay, could have been done better. When they act, you know, because when you're excited, I guess for me, when I was excited to get to those action scenes and I was just waiting for something to come along, but there wasn't any lore in between to get me from action scene A to action scene B, was a little bit rough, you know, but that's just my preference.
Yeah, I think Via Strake said imagery. Sorry, I was trying to find it. You know, that kind of goes hand in hand with what you were saying about the action scenes and stuff. There was when the author wanted to devote time to describing a particular emotion or scene, it was really well done.
Yeah, it looks like K-Rock had the same thought as well, that those emotional descriptions with physical and mental sensations were, again, really well done. That ability to bring you into those really intense moments. You know, we talked about this with the last book too, and how important that can be in like how to making a book actually good. You know,
Yeah.
So obviously, and that's something that I think is actually harder to teach, because a lot of the other issues that we've talked about are things that like the next book could easily solve with some good editing, and maybe apparently the release for this book was a little bit rushed. And there might have, so maybe with a little more time and better editing, like the other issues we talked about are all things that can be fixed with editing. But giving an author a voice that they can actually bring like real emotion into a book, I think that's a lot harder to edit into a book,
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that takes a certain level of talent and ability to observe the human condition that not everybody has.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think um, it definitely lets the author shine, those moments of description and stuff, and that's definitely something they do really well.
So was there anything that you wanted to discuss in particular, Adam?
Let's talk about
You and me.
let's talk about that. Um, so we kind of touched on this earlier, but the growth of the characters throughout the story. Do you think um, do you think everybody grew, and who do you think grew the most throughout the story?
Um, for me, I don't think everybody grew, and I think part of it is because I think there was a little bit of backsliding that happened towards the very end of the book,
Yeah.
and that was a little frustrating. In particular with Anon, like again, the wishy-washiness and back and forth just feels unearned. I uh, I would say I think I don't know. It's a little bit tough. Are you? Let me ask this of you first before I answer. Do you mean emotionally, or do you mean like overall? Could be any type of growth.
Inches. I want to know who's taller at the end of the book.
Who's taller?
Just kidding. No, like I touched on it when I was talking about the conflicts at the beginning, but like everybody had some sort of thing they were struggling with and changed themselves or didn't change themselves, in certain Inani type of peoples.
Okay, so as far as like just outright growth, regardless of any other thoughts that I have on it, I think Zaylee is at the top, Amari a close second. Of those two, though, Amari has felt the most unearned. um, Zaylee's felt a little more earned, and again, we talked about this a little bit, where I thought like those moments of reflection that Zaylee has with her mom, with her mama, her baba, and with the sky goddess, are moments that made it feel like her growth was. You felt the struggle, you saw her moments of reflection, and it wasn't just given to her. And I don't know, with Amari, there were too many points where it just kind of felt like it just happened. Like you can see it happening and you can see the progress points, but I don't know, there's a few moments where I was like, oh, she's doing new things that seem like they fit, but it feels like a step was skipped to get there, I guess. It's a little hard to pinpoint exactly what that was. And it's not even like K Rock makes a good point. Everybody grows at different rates, but it's more so, I think it's maybe because from the beginning I had a lot of expectations for Amari, and again, that might have been on me because I thought there was a lot of room for her character to grow, because I actually, character-wise, liked her character the most, like just in general.
Yeah.
Like, I liked her character and I wanted more for her, and when the things came and it just didn't feel quite earned, or like there was something missing, it was a little disappointing. So, but again, to like finally answer your question, my rankings would be Zaylia Mari, very sorry, like a slightly distant Anon, and a very, very distant Zane, because he didn't change for shit.
I don't know. There was that point in the beginning where he was looking for some, and then no, I agree. I feel like he just didn't have screen time for it.
Yeah, I mean, VS Drake makes a good point, though. Zane was meant to be a bit of a foil to the other characters, and yeah, he did that well. But like I guess it kind of stinks when you're traveling with like three other characters whose perspectives we actually get to take, and you're with them and you just don't grow like at all, even if it's for a short period of time. It's like, well, what are you do? Like, what are you doing with yourself? And it's a little bit frustrating with the character, but yeah, Zane was like Sokka, but with no growth. We're drawing way too many comparisons to that show.
And no cactus juice scene.
Well, yeah, he wasn't even that much comic relief either, which would have been fun. K-Rock also makes a good point, though, that these are teenagers, and expecting them to have like adult level insight or outcomes is not realistic. Despite the very adult situations that they get put in, in the midst of war and genocide, essentially.
Yeah.
There's
No, I really liked Anand's internal struggle and how he shifted at the end and then shifted back. I felt was like a very realistic thing to have happened. He was brought up to hate magic and those who use it, even though he has magic himself, and he struggles with that for a good 70% of the book before finally accepting it into his heart and then relapsing and going, wait, no, this isn't what I want. I feel like that was a very realistic way for that to play out. Definitely not story esque in terms of how we usually see growth in stories, but that's sort of the thing you see all the time in actual society. I think it, as unfortunate as it was played out well.
I mean, you make a good point, and one of the things I've been realizing, like as we've been talking, is part of my issues with him revolve more around the romance than him in particular, just because like that in general took away from both characters, but for me it made me really annoyed with Anon, like just anything involving the romance between them two. um but you're right, that is a way things typically resolve in real life, and there's a realism to that, and I think that's worth reevaluating how I see him as a character, and I would put him then maybe as a slight third, but just maybe could have had a little more self-reflection. But you could say that about any of the main characters, but yeah, my rankings remain the same. He's just not as far back, and I don't have as much of an issue. My real issue is with the bromance. It's not with him. Like, well, that's another good point, Via Drake, is that he did grow a lot, just in a lot of different directions and he grew like a bit in a lot of different directions, which we're used to seeing characters kind of grow in one, maybe two ways. And, he had to grow out of being a little shit, which he kind of was at the beginning. He had to grow into thinking for himself in general. He had to grow into seeing the world, like actually being able to take in more than just like his very privileged view of the world as a prince. And obviously the internal struggle with magic and just the nature of the way he treats people is a big area. And when you consider all those different areas of growth, it does, add up.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the scene where Anon finally catches up to the group and confronts them for the first time, and then obviously fails to to succeed in his mission. So when he enters the scene, Mari says something like, "I know you're not going to hurt. I'm going to talk to you because I know you're not going to hurt me." And he's all like, "You don't know that?" And she's like, "No, you don't know that. I do." What did you think of that scene? And do you think it played out realistically?
That was one of those moments where I think it played out realistically, but the element that was missing was I think it was done a little too quickly. So maybe not realistically in that respect, because it just felt like it got handled way quicker than it would in real life. Like that doesn't seem like the kind of thing is just like we're gonna have this like what it was only like a couple minutes of exchange, which in a book that's like 17 hours long is not a lot. and that seems like the kind of thing that to get resolved in the way that it would have taken either a lot more discussion or a lot more fists being thrown in faces.
Yeah.
So I think where they ended up was realistic, and I think that it was just like it felt like a Cliff Notes version of an argument to me, essentially, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it looks like did you type it in chat, the question? Because it looks like VS Drake missed it.
I did. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, I thought it could have been done a little more justice, and there's other areas in the book that I probably would have, like, if you're worried about space for an already big book, there were other areas that could have had some stuff cut down to lend itself to this instead. And I think honestly, I think if this scene would have been done better, I would have to completely reevaluate what I think of the growth of Inan and Amari. Like, I think there's a lot of things that felt unearned because this scene was not given the justice that it needed, in my opinion. Wasn't done badly. I just think there was a lot more room for it to be done very well. And, like, that's the difference between this being a good book and an excellent book,
Yeah, I'll say, like, I thought the moment when Amari was like, you won't hurt me, I know this 100% certainty, was such a powerful moment for Inan's own internal struggle, and it was handled very briefly, and could have been a really great turning point in the story for Inan.
Exactly. Thank you
Yeah.
Thank you for like finally getting out what I was trying to say for like 10 minutes.
I still liked the moment because I felt like Inari's part in it was very, very true to her own self.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely agree with what you're saying about like it could have been built up more. It could have been longer,
Well,
more
it,
impactful.
yeah, because the other thing is that that specific conflict gets brought up so much in this book, where it goes all the way back to like the flashbacks of when he's with his father and his father's like, you need to choose your country over yourself no matter what. And like that includes everybody, friends, family, whatever. Country comes first, and like that was like one of those really big defining moments where he gets it thrown in his face. I know you won't hurt me, and that like you said, directly speaks to that conflict within himself of what's he gonna do when somebody he cares about opposes the values he was taught to cherish regarding his country. And yeah, I think it got glossed over a bit. Like if that's all it took, well, why? like,
Yeah.
like I don't know. If that was given a little more attention, I think that would have lent itself to bringing a little more poignancy to all the subsequent conflicts. But that's a perfect example of what I was talking about, where I felt like there was just a little something missing. And
Yeah. VS Drake asks, "What did you think of the King?"
the big bad guy. I mean, I said this before in our last. I said this in our last chat. I do like when somebody can write a bad guy that you love to hate, and the King's Sasan, I think, right?
Saren.
Saren.
I don't know how you say it.
Saren. That's one. Yeah. Oh yeah, King Saren. Duh. Anyway, so King Saren was one of those characters that I thought was written to be a character that you just dislike through and through, and I thought absolutely accomplished that. Now, Suron.
Anyway, the King.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry. This is why you'd think we'd know better because we read it audiobook style, but
listen to it. Yeah.
but that is the one gripe that I did kind of have is like, well, it's not even necessarily a gripe, it's just a trope that I don't always like is this when the big bad is like there in the beginning, gone through the entire middle, and then shows up right at the end.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite trope. I mean, it can be done well. It's just a personal preference, so that's not my favorite. But I also understand why it's done because there's the introduction of the big bad, and they have to build themselves up to be able to handle the big bad. Like that's the idea behind it, and I think that might have been more palatable had again like those bits of growth been a little more satisfying leading up to that point. But he was definitely one of those characters that I just love to hate. So props on that one.
Yeah, for me, I think the big question when it comes to the King is his anger, his fervor against the Magi, and his mistreatment of practically everyone around him realistic?
I mean, that's the thing in real life. We see that it's as fucked up as that is. Yeah. I think it absolutely is. There's a lot of people who do stuff out of fear and out of a desire to retain power. Like that's there's a reason why that is a trope and why it comes up so often. So I think yeah, that is pretty realistic. And the fact, well, and the thing is one of the things I think that lends it to being super realistic is the mentality that he tries to teach Anon and Amari, especially Anon, is this idea of like there's something bigger than you, and I don't care what you think your morals are. This bigger thing is more important than anything else, and you're going to defend it like it's more important than anything else because that's what's most important to him. And when you are willing to teach that to children and to like brainwash them into believing that sort of thing, then it means that you either have to believe it on such a deep level that you're willing to do the same thing to other people, or you have to be a sociopath, or both. And and this guy kind of it shows his colors is what he's teaching. And so, yeah, I thought that was pretty realistic, and I thought it was handled well in that they kind of set it up that this is more than just, a guy who's mean for the sake of mean. This is a guy who who fundamentally believes that these people are a threat to him, whether that is selfish or not is mildly debatable. But
yeah, I guess I would have liked. I mean, you kind of already said it, but I would have liked more screen time with him.
Yeah.
Just to kind of flesh him out, see more of his personality other than just his rage towards the Magi.
Looks like K-Rock says that they like the literary tool of showing how two different people reacted to family tragedy so differently. And I think that kind of speaks to what you were talking about the different types of conflicts, and that does lend itself to a depth of character for these kids, is this idea that like we had very similar circumstances and we reacted to it very differently because we are different people.
Yeah.
And that's realistic in and of itself, which it's a good point. Reading through some more of the chat stuff here. We're just trying to catch up a little bit. Trying to figure out who is the yin to Zaylee's yang according to V.S. Drake. I'm assuming that V.S.
king.
Drake, you're talking about the king. Yeah. And one of the things I kind of liked, though, is that they are yin and yang, but they both have semi-aggressive natures, which I thought was kind of cool. To be like, you can definitely be like, all the opposite ends of the spectrums while having even something in common, which is now granted one is murderously aggressive and the other one is much more just defensively aggressive, but I thought it was kind of cool that like just because they are on opposite sides, they didn't have to be 100% opposite people, Stormy says they didn't like the author comments at the end of the book. I'm not sure what you mean by that, if you wouldn't mind clarifying. V.S. Drake does make a good point, I think, though, that Anon was an important character to make his father's fears hit home a bit harder. Is that this was going to become a generational thing? Is that what you mean? Because that's what I would think of if I'm thinking about his fear hitting harder, is that it's not just going to be me. This is going to echo through the generations.
Yeah. You got any topics you want to talk about?
Well, I was kind of hoping to get back a little bit from Stormreed, because one of the things I did want to talk about was the author comments, but I was going to save that for my final thoughts. I guess we can probably at this point move into predictions for the next book. Unless you have something specific you wanted to go over.
No, I pretty much fleshed out everything I wanted to talk about on this one.
Well, just saw the question from K Brock. I'm not sure what tool you're referring to. Used to show how absolute power corrupts, because when I think of absolute power corrupting absolutely, do you mean anger is the tool? I'm not exactly sure. If you can clarify, that'd be great. While we start in on our oh yeah, the difference between Zayla and Saren. I don't necessarily know. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say that it's power was the only difference, because presumably, at least by the end, Zele does have power in the form of magic. Now, he is definitely Saren is definitely an example of what she does not want to become. In that respect, I guess maybe is the showing how power can corrupt. But I don't necessarily know that it's like the absolute power corrupting absolutely bit, but I might be adding that myself. So, did you have anything to add to that, or do you want to move into predictions?
No, I think we can move into predictions.
All right.
What are your predictions?
My prediction is that magic is unleashed on the world again, like fully, but not immediately. I think it's going to be a little bit into the book before it happens, despite the fact that they have the 3 artifacts.
Excuse me.
I think that, yeah, I actually kind of agree with VS Drake. I think that there's going to be something of an army raised. There is going to be a revolution. And I think it's going to end with Zaylee leaving the country.
Yeah, I think, the whole point of the adventure was to get back magic so that they could stand against the rest of society, essentially, and stop the oppression that their people have been seeing. So I think obviously we'll see some stuff with that in book 2. I think because the ritual didn't go exactly as planned, the impromptu blood magic and stuff. It'd be interesting to see if that's going to affect how magic spreads to all the diviners and magi. If it's altered or diminished in any way, or spreads to people who don't have the genetic background, so to say, for the magic. I think that'll be kind of interesting if anything goes on with that in terms of development for different characters.
But this is predictions. Do you think it will?
Oh, I think it will. I think there will be something that happens that goes along the line of, "Oh, that's unexpected. How did you get magic?" Or, "How come I don't have magic? I was supposed to have magic."
Yeah, and I'm really hoping it doesn't go this way, because the whole chosen one route thing, but feels like there's going to wind up somebody showing up who can use multiple kinds of magic.
Yeah.
So that'd be my other prediction.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
All right. So unless
K-Brock, Mama Agba teach everyone to use magic in a responsible way. I don't know. I personally, I think she's kind of pissed off about how shit went down. So she was definitely a voice of reason at the beginning, but she lived through the initial oppression. So
I mean, I think she'll be kind of like a guiding voice. How successful she'll be, I'm not so sure, especially if we do get that element of magic showing up to people who originally didn't show the white hair. So the propensity for it. Stormy, I think they did mention that like everybody does have like some connection to the magic, or at least when it was around and it permeated the land. But the ability to actually guide it and use it was exclusive to the Magi or anybody with white hair. So, or diviners as they're called in the time of the story. All right, so moving on to final thoughts.
Yeah, this book was interesting. It had a lot of literary devices thrown in, which I liked. The overarching plot of Let's Bring Back Magic is a classic and well-told theme, and I think Children of Blood and Bone did that particular theme justice. There were definitely weak points in terms of overall details and maybe biting off a little bit too much in terms of how much the author wanted to include in the first book. But I really enjoyed all of the characters, especially, or in particular, all of their inner conflicts and the ways they addressed it throughout the story, or in terms of growing and ungrowing in realistic ways. I thought it was well done. I don't feel like the audiobook lent I don't know, something about the audiobook I just didn't particularly enjoy. I felt like the narrator did a really good job of expressing emotion, but I don't know. Sometimes it felt like I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. The book was good. I would recommend it. It's not the best book I've ever read, but it's definitely good.
Well, my final thoughts would be, I liked a lot of, very much similar to what V.S. Drake said about there are some missing elements about delivery on a lot of potential that gets set up front. There's a lot of good initial world building, a lot of good scenes, especially when it comes to action scenes. And despite the fact that there are elements that are a bit missing, there are characters with a lot of potential they've already shown that they can do some growth, and that they are different enough that they could continue to have different struggles, which sets them up for another good sequel, because there's still a lot each of them can learn and bring a different kind of voice to the book. I think the issue that you're having with the audiobook might have been similar to what I was having, in that because of the perspective, it doesn't super well lend itself to audiobook if you're not sitting there paying super close attention to it. Yeah. Which you at that point might be reading the physical book. It was nice to have a voice that actually was clearly Nigerian, could bring expression to those characters, pronounce things for us people who don't have a lot of experience with names born out of Yoruba, which is the language of much of Nigeria and the language of magic in this book, which we never talked about. But so that part was kind of cool. But I think overall it was a good book with a lot more potential than it delivered on. So I would recommend it in the hope, especially in the hopes that the second book kind of follows through on those elements that had a lot of potential that didn't quite, I think, get fulfilled. But the last bit I would say I would recommend it for is it's definitely worth it for those emotional scenes, because, and this is where I thought, and I disagree with Stormreed, I liked the author's note at the end because it kind of showed why some of the decisions were made and why so much attention was paid to those emotional moments. And if that was the author's goal, I thought they, at least for me, really hit it out of the park with those emotional moments of like what it's like to really experience loss and tragedy and violence. So yeah, so I would definitely recommend it for anybody who's willing to put themselves out there that way and who likes a unique mythical setting too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's definitely a very unique lore. So
yeah,
if you want something that's not Greek, Roman, or Norse, Greek, Roman, Norse, or like Egyptian, it's definitely worth checking out. So with that, I think we're gonna go ahead and close them out for the night. So our next book is, okay, I thought I had it up here.
The book in line is The Lost Apothecary for 2 weeks out from March 12th. And then after that, we have Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes for March 26th.
Awesome. So Lost Apothecary, I believe, is our women's book women's book week winner, and our newest one, Dead Silences, for our debut authors week. So April, I think our next theme is just we're gonna get back to the basics. We're gonna, April is it includes National Book Day, so we're gonna do what we do best, and let you send us in recommendations for anything. If there's anything you'd like to see us read, throw it at us before the end of the day tomorrow, and we'll put it in for the vote.
But yeah, otherwise, here's some plugs for you guys. DMstable.com for all information about the 800s and all the other projects we do. If you want to see some other videos that we've made, you should go to YouTube and check us out there. We're also the DM's Table on YouTube. Patreon, talked about that a little bit earlier, but patreon.com/DM's Table. Give us a few bucks and you get to vote, among other things. If you want to hit us up on socials, we got a Facebook and Twitter page. We're at The DM's Table on Facebook and at DM's Table on Twitter. And also, we've got a Discord. If you want to talk on the daily with us, feel free to hit us up on our socials and we'll get you our Discord link. The Discord is a place of inclusion for all things nerdy. We don't just talk books there. We talk D&D, 3D printing, memes, pretty much everything that's nerdy. So it's got something there for everybody. But otherwise, that's our plugs for the day.
Oh, and just throw it out there in honor of National Book Day. All books votes in April will be open to the public. And we'll make it our Bring a Friend event as well. So everybody will be able to vote, whether you're a patron or not, through all of April for both of those books. Thank you, by the way, K-Rock, for the book suggestion. I believe the Midnight Library is already on our list, but we'll definitely throw it in for the vote for April. And as I said, bring a friend. They'll be able to vote so they can get a taste of the power. And, but to be able to use those votes, keep in mind you will be using those votes through March for April books. So, so for next month, go ahead and just bring people around. Let them know what we're all about, and that we're happy to have them whether or not they read the books. We've had some people who haven't read who've enjoyed our show. We're happy to have you around. There's things that people have been able to add even though they haven't read. So if you just like books, or if you think you might find it interesting, or you're wondering whether or not you might enjoy a book, come around, or you think people might, bring them around, and we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us tonight, especially for adding in your comments. It was nice to see some, what's the word, exposition from many places. So
yeah, it was definitely nice to see some other viewpoints, and we love having that active chat. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next book.
Yes, I'm going to get back to it right now. This is like the 600th time I've read this particular book.